Are you concerned that your food is at risk because of tiny pinholes in Mylar bags? We need to talk about this. Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan, and this is Kylie. What are you doing?
I'm checking for pinholes in my Mylar bags.
Well, interesting, okay.
Don't you check for pinholes in your Mylar bags?
Well, not usually, because I don't have enough time to spend all day looking through my Mylar bags.
So there are a lot of myths out there about food storage and storing food in Mylar bags. And today we're actually going to talk about some of the myths that might keep you from sleeping at night when you're thinking about the food that you have stored in Mylar bags. So let's get to it. Myth number one, it is critical that you check all Mylar bags before using them to make sure that you cannot see any pinholes of light through the Mylar. True or false?
That is actually false. And we don't have the time to do that.
So with Mylar is an incredibly flexible, tough material. And it is made out of several different layers that you'll have to talk to the engineer about. But one of the center layers is aluminum or some type of a really thin metal. And so the plastic piece and the nylon piece of it totally is flexible, but the metal's not. So whenever it's folded, you are going to see little tiny cracks in it. However, that is not going to significantly affect the performance of the bag at all.
Right, because that's just a crack in the foil, not in the very, very tough Mylar. Mylar was developed by DuPont way back when, and it's one of the toughest materials there is. It's just that foil in there that will crack a little bit, and it makes it look like you have a hole.
And now that we've cleared that up, let's talk about myth number two, that because Mylar is actually transparent, which it is, light gets through it and it will degrade your food storage and your food's not good in it. True or false?
And that one's actually false also. We do want to make sure that we keep our food out of the light, but normally we're storing this in a dark place. That's the ideal. We want to store cool, dark, and dry. And so these are typically going to be in a dark place, maybe in a tote because we want to protect them from rodents. And any little teeny tiny hole in there will not let, even if it were in a lighter place, that little teeny hole is not going to let enough light in to cause any serious detriment.
No, and the fact that the Mylar itself, when you hold it up, is a little bit transparent, it's only going to matter if you are storing these Mylar bags in direct sunlight, and you're never going to want to store any of your food in direct sunlight. So I don't see that being a problem at all. We should have talked about at the very beginning of this video that quality matters. We happen to like PackFreshUSA, their oxygen absorbers and their Mylar bags. I think that they're a quality Mylar bag, but if you buy some of these cheap knockoffs, what you're gonna find is that they will not hold up as well. I've heard stories where the Mylar actually flakes off, and so when people are opening up their food storage, they've got all this stuff that's flaked off from the bag. If you purchase a quality Mylar, that's not going to happen. Quality Mylar, store it correctly, and we should just be fine. Now, let's talk just a little bit about tiny holes, like real holes in your Mylar, because when you're looking through that light, you'll see little tiny irregularities in the Mylar bag, and those aren't true holes. Most of the time, you're never gonna have to worry about it. But if you are worried about it and you wanna sleep at night, there's a couple things that you can do that you can test to make sure that your Mylar bag doesn't have any holes and that the integrity is intact. I wouldn't recommend doing this with all Mylar bags. In fact, I wouldn't do it except for I'm going to show it to you because I know that I've purchased a quality bag to begin with. So the first way that we can check is to actually heat seal the end of a Mylar bag with air in it. And then we're going to just set it down and put something heavy on it, like a book or something like that, and let it sit there for overnight or 24 hours and see if you have any leakage occurring. Another thing that you could do is you could fill up the bag actually with water and seal it and see if that leaks. Another thing that we could do is take a Mylar bag, seal the air in it, and submerge it underneath water and see if you see or hear any air bubbles coming up. All of those would be a way to check the bag. Now, if you've done that, you might think that you've ruined your bag, but you haven't. Let it dry out, and you can just cut off the area that you sealed and then fill it with food and then heat seal it again. And that's another thing. You can reuse Mylar bags as long as you clean them squeaky, squeaky clean and they're perfectly dry. And you just cut off where you sealed it and reseal it. Another way to check is to use an oxygen absorber and put it in your Mylar bag, right, with whatever food it is. And then usually what you're gonna see is you are going to see the bag kind of shrink up a bit. Now, this is a little bit tricky because air is 21% oxygen. The oxygen absorber only removes the oxygen, nothing else, right? None of the other gases that are in the air. So you're gonna see some shrinkage, but not a ton. The more air that you squeeze out of the bag before you seal it, the bigger difference you're gonna see. These are some amazingly delicious pumpkin pie filling bites that I made. Normally, I wouldn't store for long-term storage anything that's clear and see-through. I'd always make sure that it's the Mylar all the way through. But for this, we just make them for snacks. But what you can do is you can just take a little knife or something, and you'll notice immediately if there's a pinhole, because see how it just softens up? Like right away, all of that suction is gone.
So let's wrap this up. Let me just say Mylar is awesome. Now, again, you do want to make sure you're buying quality, because if you're buying junk, you're going to have problems. If you buy quality, the Mylar is so tough, and they've put that metal layer right in the middle. It increases the ability for it to be a barrier to oxygen. So this is awesome. They do a great job. Make sure you store that in a place where rodents can't get it, in some kind of a secondary container. But this is an awesome way to do food storage. 25 years.
It's never going to be as good as a glass jar or as a number 10 can, because both of those are true oxygen barriers. This is the next closest thing. Now, I've got to say here, you want to make sure you can't just put anything in a Mylar bag and put an oxygen absorber in it. You've got to make sure that the foods that you are storing are safe to store in a low oxygen environment. So look at some of our other videos to find out what those are, but generally you want it to be low in fat and less than 10% in moisture if you're going to store it in a reduced oxygen environment. But Mylar gives you a lot of versatility where you can store a lot of different things that you can't just go and purchase already packaged for long-term storage.
That's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. So, like we said, PackFreshUSA has been very good. We've had great experience with them, both with their bags and with their oxygen absorbers. If you want to get product from them, use the promo code PROVIDENT and they'll give you 10% off.
And there's a link in the description of the video.
Yeah. Now for the question of the day. What concerns or questions do you still have about Mylar? Let's get this discussion rolling and let's talk about this and get these things solved. Comment below, and thanks for being part of the solution.